So in today's outrageously exciting video, I'm going to be talking about the scintillating subject of guitar strings.
Are you serious?
And I'm going to be asking a few questions, the last one of which is, am I crazy?
What do you think you are, for Christ's sake? Crazy or something?
So let's start with the guitar strings that I use and that I have probably used for about 20 years. I use 9-42. I use 9s on short scale guitars. I use 9s on Gibson scale guitars. And I use 9s on Fender guitars. The first thing that I'm interested to hear from viewers here is, have you always used the same gauge of guitar string throughout your playing career? Or at various points have you changed? Because I can't remember ever changing from 9-42. So have you changed strings? If you're playing a lot, do you maybe move up to 10s or something like that if you're used to using 9s? Or do you like very heavy gauge strings? So I guess that's question one. The next question would be, do you think the string gauge makes any difference to your tone? I'm not talking about watching a scientific video on YouTube where somebody's saying, oh well, if you measure these 7s against these 11s, there's a minute difference in, I don't know, output or something like that. I'm asking, if you change the strings on your guitar, say you go from 9s to 11s, do you hear any difference in tone? For me personally, if someone hands me a guitar with 10s on, like if I'm doing a fly gig and somebody gives me a spare guitar that's got 10s on and I'm using my own guitar which has got 9s on, I don't hear any difference in tone or anything like that. And some of the greatest players of all time have played very light gauge strings. And combine very light gauge strings with down tuning. That said, some of the greatest guitarists of all time have played with enormous strings and got great tone as well. Very thin or very thick. All these players got great tone, but does it make any difference to you? I'm interested in finding out. Doesn't make any difference to me, but that is just my opinion. Now, next question. If you're playing a different scale of guitar, do you change the gauge of strings that you're using? Because I watched a few videos on offset guitars, because I have a few over there, and most people tend to say if you're playing offset guitars, in particular short scale offset guitars like a Mustang or a Jaguar, it's better to use like 11s, 10s at the very, very least, maybe 11s. But I still use 9-42s on short scale guitars. But I personally have never found anything lacking tone-wise by using 9s on a short scale guitar. On a Gibson scale guitar, I'll use 9-42s as well. And on things like a Fender Strat, or my Fender my Squire J Mascis Jazzmaster, I use 9-42s on that as well. And again, I don't hear anything lacking in the tone. The one thing I will say is, whenever I take a guitar into my guitar tech, who's a brilliant guitar tech, by the way, he will say, oh, you know what, 9-42s on your Les Paul again, you need to move up to 10s for Les Paul. So I don't know if that's like a perceived wisdom that people have. If you're using a Gibson, it's much better to use a Gibson with heavier gauge of strings. And if you're using like a short scale guitar, you should definitely use heavier strings. Some people will have 9s purely for things like a Strat, which has a longer scale length. So that brings me on to the final question. Am I a lunatic? Because I use the same strings on every guitar that I have, apart from the one bass I own. I use 9042s on short scale guitars, Gibson scale guitars and Strat style guitars. I do not notice any difference in tone on any of them if I change the strings. What I do find is obviously on the shorter scale guitars with 9s, it is much easier to bend strings. It is also easier to hit strings out of tune if I'm playing my Mustang. And sometimes like I'll do drop tuning, I'll do like a drop D with 9042s on a Mustang. If you hit your bottom string too hard, it's going to go whoa, whoa. It's going to be warbling well out of tune. And I watch a few of my own videos back where I'm in drop D tuning and I can hear them doing that. But I just get used to it. I don't know, I just start playing. The first couple of times I think I'm hitting the strings a little bit hard, and then within 30 seconds it's like, okay, need to take it easy on this one, Dudsy, take it a bit easier. You're using a short scale guitar. But I've just found it easier over the years to use the same gauge of strings on every guitar regardless of scale length. Is that a crazy thing? Would you do that? Do you change string gauge depending on the scale you're using? Have I just got into a habit and that's the only reason I do it, is it's become a habit, and it only takes me a little while to adjust to the lighter gauge of strings on a shorter scale? I don't know. I'm maybe looking for some sort of therapy here. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe this is one of these videos where I'm asking for, asking for help. But as ever, folks, it's a privilege and a pleasure bringing you content on Dunsy's Guitar World. Cheers for now.